Goswami, recording in progress. Sri Rupa Goswami, Sri Raghunath Bhatta Goswami, Sri Raghunath Das Goswami, Sri Jiva Goswami, and Sri Gopala Bhatta Goswami, who are very expert in scrutinizing, studying all the revealed scriptures with the aim of establishing eternal religious principles for the benefit of all human beings. Thus they are honored all over the three worlds, and they are worth taking shelter of because they are absorbed in the mood of the gopis and are engaged in the transcendental loving service of Radha and Krishna. Nama Am Vishnu Badaya Krishna Vistaya Bhutale Shmati Bhakti Vedanta Sramti Namane Namaste Sarasati Devi Gauravani Pachaline Nivasesha Sunyavadi Pashtatara Satanine Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So welcome again, Hare Krishna. So let's not spend too long on what we have already covered, but because we didn't have a class last week, it'd be good to just jog our memory and just to pick up a few points that we discussed on in our last class. Yep. So for that, I just bring up I'll just flash up the slides and mention one or two things. The basic principle Bhakti, which is this is from the preface. Yep. Basic principle is devotional service. And I'll read this last part here. The nectar of devotion teaches us the science. Yeah. Prabhupada had a book, The Science of Self-Realization. Yeah. So the science of loving every one of the living entities perfectly by the easy method of loving Krishna. Can anyone recall how we expanded upon that? It's in it's in the preface there. Bit of a difficult question, I must admit. I'll give you 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3. I'll give you 1 more second. 4, 5. All right. So as far as I remember, it starts off, we have a propensity to love our immediate family, have affection, then it may expand out to one's community, then one's country, etc. So that loving propensity is there within everyone, but it's in the wrong place. So some people try to have the worthy attitude of loving mankind, yeah, but actually it really can only be done if we learn to love Krishna. And that's what Nectar Devotions teaches. If we develop our affection for Krishna, we'll have affection for everyone. That's why Prabhupada says here, that's the science of the science of loving every one of the living entities. Yeah. Even the person who gives you a parking ticket. Yeah. How to have affection for all jivas. All right. So then we spoke a little bit about this word rasa. Yeah. Mellow. Such, Prabhupada explains, it's not so easy to translate into English, but he follows Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, who describes it as a mellow. I think we had a question on that. Ultimately, it expands into the original relationships with Krishna. But at least to begin with, it means a mellow, which is experienced even in the man as is serving the family, being philanthropic, and then it goes to the country. This rasa, this experience that one has, this mellow of relationship, you could say. And we mentioned on the material platform, it's all temporary and doesn't really give us full fulfillment. But in back to Bhakti Rasa, it continues forever and ever. Yeah, ultimately, we're developing an eternal loving relationship with Krishna. Yeah. how yatata mula nishtanena, by serving Krishna. Again, this point, we learn to love. We learn how to love Krishna. Then it is immediately and simultaneously love for every living being. So it's just like watering a root of a tree. Yeah. So I'll go through it quite quick. Prabhupada is imploring out of a mood of compassion. He has said, I'm appealing herewith to such confused men, the art of devotional service. Yeah. So by taking up and developing our love for Krishna, we can, it says here, I'm sure that the fire of material existence will be extinguished. Yeah. Anyone have that experience in the material world? You feel like getting burnt? Yeah. So then Prabhupada, this is the preface, okay? Signs it there. Yeah. So then the introduction, basically the introduction was based on basically into the introductory verse. Krishna is glorified as Akila Rasamrita Murti. Yeah. It's he from him all rasa flows to. He is the supreme enjoyer of devotional mellows. Akila Rasamrita Murti. So spoke a little about the Mangala Charan, which Rupa Goswami introduces his book, the Bhakti Rasmrita Sindhu. So it defines the book's Nectar Devotions objective. He offers obeisances and he offers benedictions for as well. So Prabhupada does that and introduces obviously his own spiritual master. Yeah, so he's offering respects to Rupa Goswami and to Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Prabhupada Thakur Ki Jai. Hare Krishna. And then, do you remember this here? Sharks. Can anyone say something about this if they can remember from week before last?
Haribol Prabhu, if
Yes,
I'm
please.
correct, uh,
Here you are.
so we don't merge into the effulgence, but the devotees they wants to stay like I think there was this example. The rivers merges into the ocean, but devotees are like the fishes in that those rivers. So they wants not to merge, but they keep their existence separate. If
Yeah,
that
thank you so much, Pratik Aaron. That's basically one of the major points. Yes, thank you so much. So yeah, so the also fishes compared to the sharks actually. Yeah. So sharks generally don't live in shallow pools of water. They can be found in oceans and they swim very deep. So the devotees of the Lord, they swim very deep in this loving devotion to Krishna. And as such, they're not attracted to the pleasures on the material platform because they're swimming deep in the ocean of rasa. Yeah. That's the shark. And also, as we mentioned, yes, the sharks reject the rivers, as Patik correctly mentioned. Um, Personalists argue the ultimate realization is to merge, but no, the devotees don't want to merge. That's a hellish conception. They want to be engaged in loving exchanges with Krishna. Yeah, and also the sharks, because they swim so deep in the ocean, then they're safe from the fisherman's net. So ultimately, the devotees break free from the snares of birth and death, just like the sharks go so deep that they do not captured. Sometimes I think they are, but for most part, they do not get entangled in the fisherman's net, which is closer to the surface. Yeah. So Rupa Goswami mentions this. We're on the introduction, just given a very quick synopsis. And then the rest of the introduction is dedicated to this verse here, which is the most important verse in the Nectar of Devotion. It's obviously a verse to be learned, yeah, and to recite it to Prachur Prabhu. He's waiting to hear this verse from you. Okay. And we looked at this verse. We won't dedicate a whole class to this verse now because we've already covered it. But in essence, it gives primary characteristics and secondary characteristics. The primary characteristics are the last two lines. The secondary, no, the primary characteristics here are the second two lines, and the secondary characteristics are the first two lines. So in essence, Rupa Goswami gives a very specific definition of pure devotion, so no one can mistake it or give a misinterpretation of what is actually the highest. Uttam means the highest. What's the highest? Bhakti. So ultimately, it's for Krishna. It's the supreme person, the supreme personality. It's not for any devas or demigods. Yeah, and also it's active engagement. Bhakti is an active engagement. Yeah, the devotee is engaged in devotional service, just as all the residents of Vrindavan. They're all very active in serving Krishna in many different ways. So devotional service is an activity executed with the senses. Yeah. And that activity, remember we gave a little bit more detail on that. That activities is as instructed by the spiritual master. So those activities are empowered with a Shakti. That's very important. Yeah. And then we discussed this. Devotional service is executed with favorable intent. So why did we show this picture here in that regard? Rupa Goswami gives very specific the way he words this. It's executed with favorable intent. It's not just pleasing. If it was just pleasing, then someone might interpret this as someone could expand upon that. This is either Mustaka or Chanura. I gave you 5 seconds. See if you can. One. Long 5 seconds. Two. Three. Four. Five. Hare Krishna. So Krishna, he likes the rasa, via rasa of fighting. For him, it's just another rasa. Yeah, he has no fear of these wrestlers at all. Yeah, so he enjoys this rasa of fighting. So one may say then that Chanura is engaged in devotional service because he's pleasing Krishna. Yeah, no, but it's the intent. His intent is not to please Krishna. His intent is to what? Someone could unmute and tell us what he's trying to do to Krishna.
Cause Krishna harm. He's trying to hurt him,
Trying to kill him, man.
kill him.
Yeah, he's trying to kill him. So his intention is not favorable. It's anukul. So it cannot be termed as uttam bhakti. Okay? Because you can imagine there's all types of speculations about what is devotion to God. So Rupa Goswami is being very specific. So, but then you got the other spectrum as well here. So Madhya Soda, for all intents and purposes, she is displeasing Krishna. Yeah, Krishna is running away. And as we know, he's rubbing his eyes with great fear. So he's not very pleased when Madhya Soda is tying him up. So if you use that definition, then Madhya Soda, she is not serving Krishna. Do you understand? But actually, it's all an aspect of a loving Vatsalya Ras with Krishna. So she's enjoying an unlimited ocean of mellows in that relationship with Krishna. And Krishna ultimately, he's relishing being subordinate to the point that his devotee is chasing him and he is running away in fear. That's a pretty fire up concept of God. Yeah. Yeah. So this definition here, it accommodates that. Yeah, so we mentioned that. So there's these 3 points, primary characteristics. It's focused on Krishna, also his expansions, the Shringha, his Vishnu expansions, etc., and the devotees. It's an active engagement. Yeah, one is actively engaged in activities. Remember, we spoke about that. Yama and niyama, activities that are favorable for the development of bhakti, and a lot could be said about that. And it's executed with a favorable intent. All right. Then the secondary characteristics, which is the first 2 lines of this verse, Nyabhalasata Sanyam, Jnana Kamadi Anavritam. So the second characteristics, it's free from ulterior motives. So Uttama Bhakti, it's free of ulterior motives for gain, for material gain, for or more fruitive activity. It's described. Generally, persons go to mosque, go to synagogue, go to church, go to the temple with thoughts of getting things in return from God. Yeah, in one sense, that's pious. Bhagavad Gita mentions that, Chatur Vida Bhajanti Mam. Yeah, but ultimately, pure devotion means you're serving Krishna based on rag and affection. Yeah, it's not a business deal. So that's Uttam Bhakti, which we're going to hear about in the Nectar of Devotion. So it's free from ulterior motive. Ultimately, we want to come to that platform. And it's not covered by philosophical or fruitive pursuits. Yeah. Jnana Kamada Anavritam. Yeah. Okay. Please, any questions, please feel free to ask. This is just a review. Yeah. All right. Should we go on? And that was it. That was preface and introduction. And we definitely covered that, isn't it? And I think we edged into chapter 1. Yeah. So let me just dig that out. 1 second. You're going to see a lot of strange things on the screen and now. Okay, here we are. Chapter 1. Yes. Okay, nice. How many devotees will we have with us? 1,000? 500? All right, nice. I mean, most of you got your cameras on. That's great. Such a Kumar is not possible. But it's really nice if you do have your cameras on, because I like to speak to people and I don't like speaking to computers. And what I say is based on the expression on your face as well. So I like to see. Sometimes I may say something and you may smile. Sometimes I may say something and you frown. Sometimes I may say something and you look confused. So then I know where I'm going, okay? So it always helps. I'm sure those of you who give presentations online have the same experience. I remember one time, the first presentation I gave online was during COVID days, and I did a presentation for newcomers on reincarnation. For newcomers, and I put a lot into it. You know, I really put many, many, many hours. Anyway, so I gave the presentation. There was a surprising turnout, 80 people or so. Not one person had their camera on, and no one asked any questions. Hey, so from that was my first time doing online teaching. So after that time, I spoke to other devotees, and who would. So yeah, anyway, it's good. All right. So we made a start, isn't it? Chapter 1, as far as I remember. Can thumbs up if you remember that? Okay. Kishore remembers that. Alexander, I think you wasn't here, no? Do you remember that? No? Okay. I mean, it was a long time ago. It wasn't last week, it was the week before. But let's get into chapter 1 then. The characteristics of pure devotional service. Okay. So this chapter opens up with it's elaborating on the point that devotional service is executed not for not with the motivation of getting something. That is what Uttama Bhakti is about. So to make that point, to emphasize that point, Rupa Goswami quotes a verse from Lord Kapila. Yeah, this is from the third canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Yeah, so here, my dear mother, those are my pure devotees. So those are on the or Uttama Bhaktas. They have no desire for material benefit or philosophical speculation. Their minds are so engaged in my service that they're never interested in asking me for anything. Generally, what do they ask for? If they're offered benediction by Krishna, to be engaged in that service. And ultimately, they do not even beg to live in my abode with me. Okay? Any questions about that? Is that a bad thing then, to want to live in Krishna's abode? Should we not desire that? I'm putting this out as a question. Put your hand up and you can, or just unmute and speak away.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yeah, Alexander, you could explain a bit? Yeah, please.
Well, I was just going to reflect that in one sense, it's positive to have that desire because it keeps us attached to Krishna and it keeps us progressing in devotional service if we're neophyte. But then obviously the advanced stage, the pure stage that you're describing in the ultimate sense, naturally one doesn't care where one is as long as one's able to render some service to Krishna.
Yeah, thank you, Alexander. Obviously, you've been reading the books very nicely. Yeah, basically that. Yeah, it's a very good point. That the aspiration to escape from the material world may be a good impetus for us to take up devotional service. Yeah. But ultimately, as we will see later, is that in chapter 3, that's also ultimately considered to be, in other words, one is desiring moksha. Yeah, so one may desire to live in Krishna's abode just to be free of the kleshas of material existence. So you're not really desiring Krishna, you're desiring moksha. Yeah. But as one advances in loving devotion, one hands one's life over to Krishna. And of course, devotees can serve Krishna very nicely in the spiritual world. So that's why they pray to enter the spiritual realm. Yeah, to massage Krishna's feet, to help him herd the cows, etc. So they desire very strongly to render a particular type of service to Krishna without any impediments for eternity. Yeah, with no, yeah, in the spiritual world, which is a very favorable place. So in that sense, as Alexander correctly said, as one advances in devotion, one will come to that point. Yeah. So this is given as evidence of the purity of pure devotional service, Uttama Bhakti. So this is the third canto, chapter 29, text 10. And then interestingly, we're going to hear a little bit here the 6 qualities of pure devotional service. And then it's an interesting discussion. Rupa Goswami, he classifies devotional service. It can be classified in many different ways. He classifies it into 3 here in his study, in the Bhakti Rasmrita Sindhu. So those 3 stages of devotion, anyone could perhaps say what they are? I'll put you on the spot. Have a wild guess. When I say one, you'll go, oh yeah. Purnakusha, please go ahead.
Are these 3 levels of the devotee, like Uttama Adhikari or what is it called, Kanishta Adhikari? Is that what you mean?
Madhyam.
Yeah.
Correct, but not the answer.
Yeah.
When I say, okay, one is Vaidhi Bhakti.
Oh, right. Okay.
You got it? You got it. Yeah, I know everyone is say the first Vaidhi. The next one is Bhava Prema. Yeah. So we do Vaidhi in order to invoke Bhava. Yeah. So these three categories of devotional service are so these three categories, each one has two qualities which we're going to discuss. So here they are. So in Vaidhi Bhakti, what manifests from Vaidhi, I'll just go over them because we're going to speak about them. I won't speak about them all now, just checking. Yeah, we're going to elaborate. So just for now, the first two, these two are symptomatic of Vaidhi Bhakti. Yeah? Okay. One's Kleshagni, brings immediate relief from all material distress. And one's Subhada, it's beginning of all auspiciousness. Now, we will elaborate on these. But Bhava, there's four qualities manifest. There's these two plus these two. Okay? So pure devotional service automatically puts one in transcendental pleasure, pleasure derived from the soul and its relationship with Krishna. So moksha lokhuta krit, it puts one in transcendental pleasure. And also it's rarely achieved. This is the stage of Bhava. Yeah, we'll speak about that. And in prema, all these four manifest, including these two. So it derives the concept of liberation. Yeah. Devotee does not seek moksha or liberation due to the bliss he is experiencing in relationship to Krishna. So Shandananda Visheshatma. And then ultimately, pure devotional service is the only means to attract Krishna. So it actually attracts Krishna. Krishna Kashini. Okay? So these are the six qualities of pure devotional service. So 2 in Vaidhi, 2 at Bhava, and 2 at Prema. Okay? As we said, 6 at Prema, 4 in Bhava, 2 in Vaidhi. Hope that's clear, yeah? Now, just one, let's have a look here. Yeah. So just one note here, that these two in Vaidhi, these will manifest when one advances to the stage of Nishta. Now, these are different levels of advancement. The more different levels which Rupa Goswami will give us in the nectar of devotion. We have faith, we have association with devotees, we have hearing and chanting, then we have anartana vritti, then we have nishta, yeah? Then ruchi, ashakti, bhava, and prema. So when one is at the stage of, when one is fixed in their loving devotion to Krishna or in the principles of bhakti, that's when one is going to experience, especially this one here, beginning subhada. You will start to feel your life becoming auspicious. Things are looking up. Things are looking good. Your heart feels resplendent. Yeah, everything seems positive. So this will manifest not all of a sudden. It's not like it's a switch that switches on one day. It's like the sun's rising, you know, gradually rising. So as you take up devotion, you're going to experience some of this auspiciousness in your life. Even when you first start to associate with devotees, you know, you may feel something very sublime in your heart when you start eating prasadam. Yeah. But then if one is not at the stage of nishta, one may take a few steps back. But the stage of nishta, this is really going to manifest in fullness. Purnakishore, you have your hand raised?
So is one also getting less materialistic as one's progressing in this? Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. One is becoming
Or is that not?
spiritualized.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you could describe it like that. One's becoming, yeah, that's what happens to one when one takes up devotional service. One is becoming spiritualized and less materialistic. Yeah.
Prabhupada talks about the fever and Bhakti reducing the fever. So this is like reducing the material, the
Yeah,
illness
yeah.
and the condition. So
Yeah, Prabhupada describes that in a couple of places. Yeah, the fever of material existence, it needs to come down. The fever needs to come down. Yeah. So here we have to be a bit patient. Let's just go into, because for instance, relief of all distress may not come as soon as you see or walk into a temple. We may still, for one reason or another, be feeling the pangs of material existence. So let's look at these a bit more. So the first one, Prabhupada expands on this, Kleshagni, relief from material distress. So he expands on this. Basically, there's three causes of distress. Now, ultimately, why does one commit a activity or a dharmic activity, or what may be known as a sinful activity? Why does one do things that are not going to be for the ultimate benefit? Basically, it's because of ignorance. Yeah, one just doesn't have the required knowledge. One doesn't know how to act in such a way that is favorable for them, maybe for others. So persons may not give a damn about religious principles or spiritual principles, They're going to act according to how they want to act, regardless of the effects. Yeah. So that means that person's in ignorance. So they're going to engage in irreligious, adharmic activities. Yeah. So that, and we're going to, yeah. So that is going to give rise. So that's going to sow seeds within the heart. So the word for seed is bija. Yeah. You're going to desire to act in a certain way. Yeah. You're going to plan it out as described. You're meditating upon the objects that you want. You're meditating on the objects of the senses. Then that meditation in itself, the mind becomes attached. It becomes used to it. Becomes conditioned. And that's all mentioned in Bhagavad Gita chapter 3. So there's bija, and so then ultimately you act. Yeah. Ultimately you throw a stone through your enemy's window. So that's a sinful act. Then you have to suffer the consequences. So klesha refers to distress. So kleshagni. So agni means to be free. Yeah. So it has three causes. So that's what's mentioned here. Yeah. So also, even if one is in ignorance, it doesn't mean they're not going to get a reaction as well. In other words, one may say, "Oh, I did not know that was wrong." Yeah. Admittingly, if you know it's wrong and you do it, there's more of a severe reaction. Yeah, like a brahmana. If a brahmana drinks alcohol, then there's a severe, very severe reaction for that. Yeah, because he's a brahmana, he has a responsibility to know better. But if an ordinary person who's not a Brahmin, if they drink alcohol, there will still be a reaction, of course, but not as severe. But still there will be reaction, yeah, which sometimes can be severe, actually, coming to think of it. Everyone follows me so far? Yeah? So breaking it down a bit more. So this, the Prabhupada mentions here that a man may have committed many criminal acts. So basically, let me go back here first. So there's two kinds of sinful activities. So the sinful activities which we are suffering at present, yeah. So they are manifest. They're matured. They're parabdha. Yeah. So again, think of a sinful act like a seed, and it goes in the heart. Then it's going to manifest. Yeah. So Prabhupada, and then here those acts for which we are yet to suffer. So they're unmanifest, they're immature, aparabdha. Yeah? Like, for instance, a newborn baby, a new child, so sweet and innocent. Yeah? But within that child's heart, from previous lifetimes, is this, or is this here. So that's going to manifest. Yeah? At some point in their life, their reactions from previous adharmic activities is going to manifest. Now, Mahabharata happens to mention that if someone committed a unpleasant, a adharmic activity at the age of 25, at the age of 25, it's going to come back at them. It's very exacting. Yeah. But it's there to be a teacher, but that's another subject. So Prabhupada gives example of someone's committed criminal acts, but he's not been arrested for them. But the police are tracking him. Yeah, his days are numbered. Yeah, they got his address. They've put some trackers on his car. There's someone watching his every move. The police in the station are creating a solid case against him. But he doesn't know all of this. He thinks he's a free man. Yeah, he's being watched. Every time he goes through an airport, customs are watching him. Yeah, so eventually he gets nabbed. Yeah. So similarly, for some of the things we've done in the past, these actors are waiting for us to put us in distress in the future. Yeah. So in other words, there's like a chain. Yeah. So this is what, we leave this world. We leave this world in debt, and the activities which we've done, which are adharmic against universal principles of sattva, then it follows us in the next life. So we're creating a future bondage, and you can see how conditions are always bound in the world. But interestingly, as far as manifest and mature, he gives some details of what that may look like. So he mentions if someone is suffering from a chronic disease, yeah, if someone is suffering from legal implication, yeah, if one is born in a low or degraded family, or one is uneducated, or Prabhupada says very ugly, Okay, so these are considered to be manifest parabdha. So also as devotees that we learn to come to terms with this as well. The famous verse by Lord Brahma, Tattena kompom shishikshramano punjana eva atman kripam pipakam brit vag vapabe vidadan namaste jivit mukti pa da sayabak. So we will experience, when we take up bhakti, we're still going to find ourselves sometimes in difficult situations. But as devotees of the Lord, we understand that we are experiencing this because of something we've done in the past. And actually, Krishna is very merciful. I should be suffering a lot more. So you can try that next time you get put through the grinder. Okay? You reflect, I deserve more. Krishna's being merciful. And we continue with our japa. We continue visiting the temple. We continue rendering service to Krishna. Yeah. And it says if some person continues like that, despite going through so-called parabdha, but for devotees it's different. It's all arranged by Krishna. Then one inherits the right to return back to the kingdom of God. Okay. So, so sinful actions are much more difficult to eradicate once they become manifest. Yeah. And just like a disease, if it's caught early, if it's caught early, it's easy to eradicate, but once it's manifest, it may be more difficult. Now, the point that this is brought up here, because devotional service, the power of devotional service to Krishna can even remove manifest sinful reactions along with the suffering they bring. Yeah. Now, Krishna may see it fit or favorable for you becoming more attached to him. So you may still have to go through the grinder, so to speak, because it's going to make you let go of the material world. Yeah. But prarabdha karma is also described like an arrow. Once the arrow is released, you cannot stop it. It's going to hit its target. So prarabdha karma is like an unstoppable arrow that's going to manifest within our psyche and within our life. It's like an arrow. But the point that's brought out here is that by devotional service, developing uttam, pure devotional service, it can eradicate all of this. Yeah. Now, and Rupa Goswami, in this regard, quotes the 11th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Yeah. Someone would like to read this? Good to hear some voices other than mine. Anyone?
My dear Uddhava, just as blazing fire turns firewood into ashes, similarly, devotion unto me completely burns to ashes sins committed by my devotees.
Okay. So quite powerful, isn't it? Yeah. Just as a blazing fire, he mentions. Yeah. It can burn any amount of fuel. We've seen a lot of blazing fires happening in the world, yeah? So it burns everything, anything in its path. Everything and anything in its path gets burnt. So in the same way, the example is given that service to Krishna, it burns up all of these simple activities. And Prabhupada gives the example that just like Arjuna, he thought that fighting was sinful. But Krishna engaged him on the battlefield under his order. And because it was under Krishna's order, he was not subject to any sinful reaction. Prabhupada gives that as an example. Yeah? And so a question might come up here. Okay, so how to gain relief from reactions to past deeds? Basically, it's been said here by engaging in devotional service, but that means we have to take full shelter of the potency of devotional service. We have no other way to go. Yeah. So that's an item of surrender. Where Krishna says, Mas Sujaha. We've been building up this, that how many sinful things have we done in countless billions of lifetimes? It's more or less inconceivable. Yeah. I mean, that's why we got born with a material body. In one sense, that's a simple reaction. Just having a material body. We are the minority. Yeah. Don't forget that most jivas are free in the spiritual realm. We are in a prison, a small little prison within that vast sky of the reality, which is called the material world. Yeah. So, so we have, yeah. So is a simple reaction. Yeah. Purnakishore, Prabhu?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a point on
Please.
the suffering discussion. And
Yeah.
suffering really is a gift because we would go back into our habits of comfort into the material world, right? If we've come from the process of being frustrated, that's brought us into devotional service. We want those kicks because we can so easily lapse back into go back into material tendencies, material enjoyment. So the suffering is like a gift, really, from Krishna.
Yeah, that's why I mentioned that karma, bad karma, is supposed to be a teacher. Yeah, so it teaches us. So we feel the results and we want to go in a path of goodness. So yeah, that's very nicely explained. So it's there to show us, there to guide us towards goodness. Yeah. Yes, very important point. I just quote here another verse. This is from the 33rd chapter of the third canto. Again, it's Lord Kapila. He says, my dear Lord, there are 9 different kinds of devotional service. I think we know that. 7th canto, Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu, Smara Parasevanam, Archanam Vandanam Dasyam, Sakramatam Vedanam. Beginning with hearing and chanting. Anyone who hears about your pastimes, who chants your glories, who offers you obeisances, who thinks of you, and in this way executes any of the 9 kinds of devotional service, even in born in a family of swapachara or dog eaters, considered from a Vedic perspective to be the lowest of mankind, become immediately qualified to perform sacrifices. Yeah. Immediately qualified. Yeah. And so in other words, devotional service, what's been brought out here, has the power to nullify all kinds of reactions to sinful deeds. But at the same time, we should be alert not to commit any more. Okay. Yeah. That's what it means to be a devotee. We are alert not to entangle ourselves again. Yeah. So again, for another clear understanding of what's going on or what's being described here. So there was another slide here, but I thought it would complicate things, so I'll just explain it from here. So sinful reaction generates, this is an important point to make as well, it generates 2 types of reactions. So we have the aparabdha, manifest reaction, and the aparabdha, the unmanifest reaction. Yeah. Now the manifest reaction, as we mentioned, it manifests in direct physical or emotional suffering. We mentioned those points. Yeah. Now this one, the unmanifest reaction, indirectly is said here, indirect suffering by increased sinful proclivity. So for instance, if you engage in an irreligious or sinful activity, it's not just that you do the activity and you walk away from it and there's no connection. No, you will create a rope that will attract you to do that same activity again. Yeah, you will create a kind of I'm going to say, you will create a mental propensity, and the memory of that will be in your psyche, and you'll be attracted to do that same thing again. So in other words, it carries, that simple reaction carries a proclivity for you to do the same thing again. That's why it's so hard to give up sometimes. Yeah. So now, for example, I think, for example, I think Prabhupada says this in there in the Nectar Devotion, that say if someone, some suffers from, they have a proclivity for unlimited or for sex, yeah, and so increasing sexual desires, so they become completely entangled. I think Prabhupada mentions that in some cases they may have to go through a painful operation because their lower parts gets poisoned. I won't go into detail. But then the cure for that is quite like syphilis, is quite painful. But still, because of the proclivity is there within the heart, one may not be able to stop oneself. Yeah. So to break the cycle, one has to tolerate. So we may come to devotional service, and we may take up the regulative principles, but because of past activity, the proclivity to engage in sinful acts is still going to be there like a ghost in our heart and in our mind. So what can we do? We have to tolerate. And then gradually, as we tolerate and we follow very sincerely the principles that we have been given, then eventually these things will go. As we progress in our devotion, these things will leave the heart forever. Okay?
So this is the problem. Do you mean like have faith in the process? Like
yes, so taking complete shelter in Krishna. Sometimes it happens. You may be practicing devotional service for 6 years, and you're innocently going about your day, and then all of a sudden you get overwhelmed with lust. All these thoughts start coming to your mind from previous activities. Then you may start to remember the experience, and what are you going to do? Take shelter of Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare. But you have to actually do it with your very soul and your very being. You have to actually go through the medium of the holy name or prayers and take shelter of Krishna. And then if you do that, you will feel relief. It will come and it will go. Yeah. But the more you meditate upon it, the bigger it seems, the more impenetrable it seems. Yeah. As soon as you take shelter of Krishna and you turn your back on it, like it's described in the Mahabharata as well, that lust is such that the more attention you give it, the bigger it gets. Just imagine it like a big demon. This particular demon, that the more you think about this demon, then the bigger the demon gets. Yeah. But as soon as you turn your back on the demon, then the demon dies. Yeah, he loses all his potency. So lust and material like that, just turn away from it and walk towards Krishna, then it will die like a demon. It will just die. And you think, what was all that about? Yeah. But we have to, for that, as you can understand, we have to be somewhat on the level of nishta. Yeah, nishta. Any other questions about this? What to do? Sorry.
Sorry.
No, carry on.
Just coming a little bit, something you mentioned just previously was about the material world is a small prison house, and most of the jivas are in the spiritual world. When I was out on book distribution yesterday, one guy asked, are there new souls being created, or is there like a fixed number of souls at any one time? And I couldn't remember hearing the answer to that.
No, no, there's not new souls being created. There's no creation for the jiva. It's eternal. It's a difficult concept to get your mind around, though, because here we only experience things that come into being, stay for some time, and then go. But actually, the Krishna is eternal, and all the jivas are eternal. The experience we experience here is kind of apathetical, or what we experience here is not the reality of experience for the eternal jiva. We're the eternal jiva dumped in a place which is subject to time. So we see everything, and we relate to everything through the medium of being influenced by time. So sometimes it's difficult to actually conceive that the jivas although the jivas all exist on the platform of eternity. Although you will find in scripture there be statements like, in the beginning there was the Lord, like that. But that's just to give us some scope to grapple with the fact that the Lord is the ultimate and everything is a manifestation of his potency. But actually it's described in Gita. It says, Na tvam eva chato nasam, na tvam nema janadipa, na cheva bhavishamaha sava vayamata param. So Krishna says to Arjuna, never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor in the future shall any of us cease to be. Yeah. So from that statement in Gita, we can confirm that the soul is eternal. Does that help?
Yes, thank you, Prabhu. Another point. This guy he was like a guy in a taxi rank. But another thing he asked was about is that only animate objects or inanimate objects? And I got a little confused because sometimes I think Prabhupada said mountains, that they can also move or something like that. So that was another point related to that.
Yeah. Now, if it's a guy in a taxi, you don't want to start telling him, well, there's some mountains can move and fly. you're not quite ready for that. He might, he might consider you, he might be have doubts upon your mental situation. But yeah, I mean, all everything in one sense, I could explain that. Atoms themselves coming and they form, they collect together. Is it Bhagavatam speaks about time from the atom? There's a name for, like, when a certain amount of atoms combine, then you can see them. Like when you see light coming through a window, you can see the waves sometimes. So that's when a certain amount of atoms are collected together. There's words for when four collected together, when eight are collected together, when double that's collected together, when double that's collected together, and they exist in a certain dimension of time. So those themselves are eternal principles. Like the material energy is eternal in the sense that it's always there, but sometimes it's manifest, sometimes it's unmanifest. Yeah. But the principle, but the ingredients are always, they're always a part of the Lord's creation. But they manifest, sometimes they manifest, then they become unmanifest, then they manifest again. Does that help? It's quite a, can
It
be
does,
a,
Prabhu. But I think the Prabhu's question, because he could get. I can understand that some plants have can be living entities.
okay,
But
go on.
I think he was asking, can the living entity can be conditioned as inanimate objects?
Oh, I see. Well, it can be just as if they are inanimate. Like, for instance, someone who Prabhupada says, someone who likes to walk around naked or to show their body, then they may take birth as a tree and stand there naked for thousands of years, So more or less, they are in an inanimate situation. So but they will never become matter. The jiva is always a jiva. So he will never lose that sense of conscious or that sense of identity as a jiva. But you mentioned about mountains, he may become a jiva in a stone, which has practically no consciousness. So it may be very covered up. So it more or less may seem like inanimate because one is so covered. But actually, there is still a jiva. Like there's jivas in trees, isn't it? But their consciousness is not very advanced.
Thank you, Prabhu. That's
No
great.
problem. Yeah. Anybody else? Any questions on these points? Right. So Prabhupada brings out here is Patrick. You had a hand up? No. Okay.
Yeah, Haribol Prabhu.
How do you
So,
pronounce Pratik? Is that correct pronunciation?
yeah, Pratik, yeah.
Pratik. Okay. Thank you.
So the Kutam point, Prabhu, which says indirect suffering by increased sinful proclivity.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm just trying to like confirm my understanding. So sometimes the reaction could be there is increase in sinful inclination.
Yeah.
That's the thing we get.
Yeah. You want to do the same thing again. Yeah.
Okay.
As I said, it's not as if you do it once and you walk away from it. It creates a certain impression in your mind and in your memory, so that you ultimately become attracted to the same activity again. That's why it can be difficult to stop the cycle. That's why it helps. I mean, that's why it helps when devotees make specific vows or sankalpas of determination. Like this morning, there was an initiation ceremony here at the temple. So devotees made vows: no illicit sex, no intoxication, no meat eating. Why are they making those vows? Because they know they're going to be tempted to actually do those things. But they're making a vow now. They're putting their foot down, as I think Vaisheshika said. They're putting their foot down. So when these desires come, no, because they made a vow. So I'm not going to do it. Yeah. Although the proclivity may still be there. Yeah. So this means one has to be fixed in their devotion. And then, but then eventually these things will go. Eventually, the heart will be, instead of that type of inclination or that type of attraction, you'll be attracted to serving Krishna. That will be your subtle body. You will develop a new subtle body where it's full of desires to serve Krishna and serve Krishna's devotees. And that will flood out our previous sinful proclivity. Yeah. Does that help? Does that explain a bit more?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Yes, Ru, you have a question? Levine, yeah, you have to give me because I've forgotten your initiated name. You got your.
Sorry, yeah, hi, Prabhu. Yeah, I was just.
What's your initiated name again? Tell me.
I don't have an initiated name.
Oh, not you. I'll get mixed up.
Yeah, no.
Someone else took it. Yeah, well, yeah. Excuse me.
Yeah, no worries.
I'm encouraging you.
I mean, I guess I view this as addiction, basically, and
Yeah.
it's a way. This is like the way you fight addiction.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you. Yeah. And a lot of people are enslaved to many types of addiction. Yeah. So this from a secular, from another perspective, this is what's being explained here. This proclivity, it's addiction and it's addictive. And as we can see, it's difficult to break that addiction for many people. It takes a lot of effort. Yeah. It takes a tremendous amount of effort to break a specific addiction. Yeah. But it can be done by taking up the principles of bhakti, yeah, and developing pure desires. Yeah. Okay. So an example given is Prabhupada speaks here in this chapter, the snakes of ignorance killed by the fire of Krishna consciousness. So someone could read this for us. Someone who hasn't read yet. Let's have different devotees read. Keep you all engaged.
I'll go. Pure
Please.
devotional service in Krishna consciousness is the highest enlightenment, and when such enlightenment is there, it is just like a blazing forest fire, killing all the inauspicious snakes of desire. The example is being given in this connection that when there is a forest fire, the extensive blazing automatically kills all the snakes in the forest. There are many, many snakes on the ground of the forest, and when the fire takes place, it burns the dried foliage, and the snakes are immediately attacked. Animals who have 4 legs can flee from the fire or can at least try to flee, but the snakes are immediately killed. Similarly, the blazing fire of Krishna consciousness is so strong that the snakes of ignorance are immediately killed.
Okay, so very powerful, very nice example, yeah? So the snakes of ignorance is killed by the fire of Krishna consciousness. So we have to be in the fire we have to create a fire. Like there was a fire this morning in the temple room for the yagna. And everyone, you all know this story, heard of this story from the Srimad Bhagavatam. This picture. This is Ajamil. So how is this relevant here? This picture. We know the story. Ajamil he's a Paka Brahmin, but he becomes attracted to a low-class prostitute. So what does this mean?
Wait, sorry, I'm not familiar with the story here.
Sorry.
Purnakishore?
I mean, one way to look at it would be that obviously he fell away from his devotional practice early in his life to become attracted to this prostitute and then sort of completely obsessed with her.
Yeah.
And then when the Yamadutas came, he obviously called the name of, I think his son was the name of the Lord. Had a name. Yeah. But he did it with deep sincerity, like for help. And so the Vishnudutas, I think, came and told the Yamadutas that they couldn't take him because he still had that, I suppose, that sincerity of a call, didn't he? That they kind of embellished. I don't know if that's the way to look at it.
Kind of. I mean, you're not wrong in one sense. Very good. That's the basics of the story. But basically what is pointing out here, now Sukadev Goswami brings this out, in the fifth canto, or beginning of the sixth canto, excuse me, that actually, although Ajamil, he wasn't a bhakta, he was a paka brahmana. Yeah. So he would do austerity, his family, and he would be very charitable. Any rituals that had to be done, yeah, he would do. So in one sense, the Brahmins would do that, or they direct people to do that to become free from sinful reactions. Yeah. But that piety cannot remove the sinful seed from the heart. Yeah. As it was, the seed was there within Ajamil. And when he saw a certain scene, then that seed sprouted. So it was still there within his heart. He wasn't practicing Uttama Bhakti. Yeah, he was just a very paka brahmana. So in one sense, he was very pious. Yeah, and it's interesting that Prabhupada gives the example of this forest fire, because this is brought up in the Srimad Bhagavatam as well, um, where the fire burns everything on the surface, but the seeds are still in the ground. Just like if you see a place where there's been a forest fire, give it 2 or 3 years and you won't even see it's been a forest fire, because everything will replenish again. Yeah. So it doesn't take the forest fire doesn't burn out the seeds in the ground, which are hidden in the ground. So the same way these other ritualistic, pious activities, it's not enough to remove the desire seed in the heart. It's only by developing pure devotional service that one can be 100% clean. So then Sukadeva Goswami quotes, Kechit Kevala Bhakta Vasudeva Parayanaha Agamta Vatsi Kachnena Niraham Eva Bhaskaraha. That just as that only pure devotional service can take out those seeds. Yeah, in the same way that when the sun rises, it automatically dissipates the fog. So ultimately, only this fire of pure devotion can clean the heart 100% of all sinful reactions. Yeah, so that it will not occur again. Yeah. Purnikishore Prabhu, you had any further points?
Yeah, Prabhupada says, I think so this is related. Prabhupada says that you have a propensity for desire, so you can't get rid of the propensity, you have to realign that desire. So it's you're misdirecting that desire. That's your
yeah. There's some desires you can purify. There's some desires you just have to get rid of. You just can't go there. But there's some desires that you can. For instance, in some devotees, they love creating music, and they love creating music and they want to express themselves that way. All right, so then they take up devotional service, but then they make music for Krishna. So they dovetail that desire. Even we could give the example of sex life. Yeah, someone's attached to sex life. So someone, then one gets married, and one has sex life, and then they make them children Krishna conscious. So they engage that propensity in a dharmic way. So, some desires you can, it's difficult to dovetail in Krishna service. What can we give as an example? You want, killing an animal or something. If someone, a bit difficult, Is that help?
Yeah, I don't know whether I was thinking about this wrong, but I always conceived of this as, let's say my soul is only capable of 100% desire, and if I start off with Krishna consciousness, I've got 5% Krishna desire, 95% material lust. And over time, that just shifts down. Does that just shift? The ratio should shift the other way, or do I just get? Is it the case that I'm not replacing one thing for another? I'm just actually removing something. What am I doing through bhakti?
No, basically, it's exactly as you say, and I think you've nicely explained it. I think I touched upon it. Is that as you take up the activities of bhakti, you start to learn to desire to serve Krishna. So in that sense, you are reconstituting your subtle body, and as such, you're flooding out your material desires because you're so busy with thoughts of how to serve Krishna. Yeah. And then ultimately, what's happening at the same time, as is being explained here, it's not just you're smothering those desires and not giving them a chance because you're too busy otherwise, but they're actually going. They're actually being purified from your heart. Yeah. Like sometimes you may experience, like you may have been attracted to a certain thing, a certain fashion, certain type of music, a certain situation before you took up bhakti. Then you take up bhakti and you get exposed to those things which you used to do and like before, but your desire is gone. You're not interested in it anymore. Yeah? So that the desire has gone. So even that's why this verse is interesting. Ki chit kevala bhakta. This says the sun dissipates fog. So we've no specific need to detail and identify every tiny material desire that we have lodged in our heart. We just have to engage in devotional service and everything's going to be purified. Or we can engage it in such a way that it will eventually be purified, that beatific proclivity or propensity. So it's like that, it's like replacing off, but it's not smothering. Ultimately, all this will go. The heart will become clean. Then the heart will become full of deep, deep loving expressions and emotions for Krishna, for Krishna's servants, and your heart will just yearn in desire to serve Krishna in a certain way, and it would take over your whole being, you know? Yeah, that's the idea, is that as we advance in devotion, we develop more and more deeper desires to serve Krishna. Yeah. And at the same time, that happens to clear out all the rubbish, gets cleared out. But you can understand here where persons who are just engaged in ritualistic activities, then it doesn't take the desire seed out from the heart. And shown a certain situation, put in a certain circumstance, it's going to flame up again. Yeah. We have to say that also in devotional service, we have to be careful as well, especially in the beginning stages. We have to keep ourselves a little bit aloof and away from the things that used to attract us. Yeah, if we should, so that especially important in the beginning stages of devotional service, because we may well be tempted back to our old ways. Yeah, so in the beginning stages, we have to be a little bit careful. Yeah. So there's a whole section here. We perhaps won't have time to go for the details, but in the Bhagavatam, Maharaj Parikshit, he hears about the results of adverse sinful activities, where Sukadeva Goswami starts detailing the different hellish planets. So Maharaj Parikshit, being a king, he feels everyone as being his children, the whole kingdom and everyone in it. So he feels for everyone who out of ignorance are going to be going to the hellish planets, So then he asks Sukadeva Goswami, what can be done? So Sukadeva Goswami gives him a wrong answer first. He tells him everyone should do pious chicha. Yeah, so you go to the Brahmin, you tell the Brahmin that you drank whiskey, you drank beer, you did this, you did that, you had an affair or something, and the Brahmin will say, okay, before you die, you should do this homa. You pay me 3,000 rupees. You come, I'm going to do a homa, and you'll be free. Pious chicha. But what happens is that you do the homa, you pay the money, then you still got those same desires. And so, like the Catholics, they may go and make confession. Like in St. Patrick's Church near the temple, there's confession every Sunday. It's only half an hour confession time. But that doesn't take the seed out. So that's how, so Maharaj Parikshit didn't accept it. He said, but I see people do pious chicha, and again they engage in sinful activity. So then he says, so then Sukadeva Goswami says, they have to develop knowledge, jnana. But then Maharaj Pariksit says, we see even a learned person sometimes becomes swayed by lust. That's mentioned in Gita. Yeah. So it's even someone learned. And then Sukadeva Goswami quotes this verse, Ki chit kevala bhakta. Only by developing pure devotional service. Otherwise, just like an elephant, it takes, it goes in the water, cleans off all the dust, comes out from the water on the shore, it lifts its trunk and throws all dust over its body again. What's the point? Purna you had another point on this?
Yeah, I just remember something that really kind of moved me quite powerfully. Probably in one, I don't know if it's Back to Godhead or somewhere, but they were talking about a similar topic, and they said 3 days before Prabhupada passed from this world, they were taking him somewhere. They brought him some juice, and he looked at the juice and he said, I think in Bengali, I have no ishta, I have no desire. And what they're saying he was trying to say is, I don't want to enjoy that taste. I don't have a taste for the material world anymore. I don't want to enjoy that taste. So take it away from me. And then that triggered to me, when I read that, he got to a stage where he didn't have any material enjoyment, like in that sense. That's the way I was kind of reading that, or the way the article was explaining it. So through a lifetime of practice, he kind of got to this, like, just bring me some water. If you just bring me some water, don't bring me some juice. I don't want to enjoy my tongue on that juice. Yeah. I've gone past that, which I thought was just an amazing example of where he kind of got to.
Very graphic example. Yeah, the last stage. Yeah, that's it. Nothing, just Krishna. That's why Prabhupada said when he was in his last stages, just give me kirtan. No more Ayurvedic doctors. No more this. No more that. At some point, just give me kirtan. Yeah, there's nothing. Yeah, very good example. Thank you for bringing that out. Yes. All right, let's edge on a bit. Unless there's any more questions, please feel free to ask. So that's covered this one, okay? That here we just discussed this. Kleshagni, yeah, we just discussed that. It really gives relief from all kinds of material distress, and Rupa Goswami explains it more, and Prabhupada obviously follows that and breaks things down, yeah, and then explains how it does, yeah. So then we come to the next one, which is Krishna consciousness, all auspicious. Now remember that this will manifest more when one practice externally and internally, one is steady, yeah, in their favorable attitude towards Krishna and devotional service, yeah. So yeah, now as we mentioned, something cannot be auspicious without at least we cannot really develop this auspiciousness in the full sense of the term without becoming fixed in a devotional life, As I mentioned, there is some feelings of extraordinary shelter when we come to devotional service, but to manifest it in the full sense of one's life is now auspicious, one does have to be have an inner resolve, yeah, in their devotional commitment, yeah. That's when they will start to manifest also auspicious qualities, yeah. Yashasti bhakti bhagavati kinchanai. Just by engaging in the activities of bhakti, then all the good qualities of the demigods manifest as a natural symptom of a purified soul, yeah. So that's when, and there's these 4 factors are given for one's life being all auspicious. So subhada, it can mean in Sanskrit different meanings, means fortune, prosperity, virtue, beauty, eminence, and happiness. That's mentioned by Jiva Goswami. So it's mentioned there's 4 types of auspiciousness. So that's what's mentioned here. So one has affection for all living entities. Yeah. One of the characteristics of a material life is you may not have affection for all living entities. Some you have affection for, some you hate. Some you don't want to see, some you don't want to speak to. Yeah, this is the duality of material existence. But when one takes up devotion, then one has an affectionate attitude towards all living entities. Yeah. And this is, it's not mentioned here, but comes to mind now. This is mentioned in Chaitanya Charitamrita. There was one hunter, Murali the hunter. Some of you might know the story. This is told in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And this hunter had the specific habit or family tradition that when he would kill an animal, he would make sure he shot the arrow in such a place that the animal didn't die straight away. Part of the ritual of his hunt, handed down from his father, was to watch the animal slowly die in pain. You shouldn't laugh. That was his Murali the hunter. So Narada Muni came and he saw all these different animals writhing in pain. So eventually he came across the hunter. And he asked the hunter what he's doing, and the hunter explained he's a hunter and he's brought up to kill in this way. Anyway, by the mystic power of Narada Muni, then he saw the future reactions which was coming to him. Yeah, so the hunter became very repentant, and he fell at the feet and became a changed person, and he surrendered to Narada Muni. So Narada Muni told him to throw away his bow and arrow and just depend upon Krishna. Complete transformation of lifestyle. Yeah. So he did as Narada Muni instructed. He was worried at first how he would take care of his means. He had no means of livelihood. But when it became known that that vicious, evil hunter called Murali has become a bhakta, everyone in the villages wanted to go see him. So they went to see him. They brought him food and everything. Anyway, getting to the point here is that later when Narada Muni and his friend Parvata Muni came, they went to see how he was faring as a bhakta. And Murali saw Narada Muni coming from a distance. So he was in ecstasy. He was jumping up and down, but as he was coming towards Narada Muni and Parvata Muni to pay his obeisances, he was making sure that there was no ants on the ground because he didn't want to kill them. Yeah? So here's a person who's gone from half killing animals and watching them writhing in pain to not wanting to cause pain even to one ant. So Parvata Muni he shows this to Narada. Yeah, just see what a great devotee you are. You completely transformed his character. Yeah. So this is one aspect of Subha, affection for all living entities. So we should feel this. We should experience this to some degree. We actually feel it. It's not just a mental exercise. You feel affection for other jivas, and you don't like to see them suffer. Yeah, that means your life is becoming Subha. Now this one, being attractive to all living entities. Now, generally the life of devotion is a life of purity, so that's going to manifest in one's physical and one's psychic bodies, so to speak. So whether you know it or not, abruptly or subtly, grossly or subtle, devotees have a certain attractiveness about them because of their purity. Now, it may not be gross. It may not be someone's walking down the street and they become, oh, wow. It's really subtle. And I've seen it, actually. I've seen when devotees when they first come to a devotional service and they start taking up the activities of bhakti, they start rising earlier, they start being more clean, they start chanting the holy name, they start eating just prasadam. You can see they they change. Their physical features change. Yeah, you can see it. I see it. Their physical features change. They become more pleasing. Also, you can see it the other way around as well, where someone may be devotee, and then again they start taking up material life again. And you can see, and they change, and they go. You can see their effulgence goes. The effulgence of their presence goes. You know. So this is, as mentioned, Subha, being attractive to all living entities. And so obviously this is Lord Chaitanya in Jarikanda forest. So this is a nice example. Obviously this is Lord Chaitanya. So all the animals in Jarikanda forest became attracted and started dancing in great ecstasy. Would have loved to have seen that kirtan. The elephants and the tigers and the monkeys, they're all chanting the holy name. All attracted to Lord Chaitanya. So that example is given. Now, Prabhupada mentioned, I'll just read this part in Nectar Devotion here. At the present moment, okay, we'll just read this, then we'll stop for a break, okay? At the present moment, groups of people are engaged in welfare activities in terms of society, community, or nation. There is even an attempt in the form of the United Nations for world help activity. But due to the shortcomings of limited national activities, such a general mass welfare program for the whole world is not practically possible. The Krishna conscious movement, however, is so nice that it can render the highest benefit to the entire human race. Everyone can be attracted by this movement, so Prabhupada expands it here, that being attracted to the Krishna consciousness movement. Everyone can feel the result. Therefore, Rupa Goswami and other learned scholars agree that a broad propaganda program for Krishna consciousness movement of devotional service all over the world is the highest humanitarian welfare activity. All right, so we should never forget that we are doing the highest humanitarian welfare activity by a Harinam, Sankirtan, and book distribution, etc. Okay, Purna you have your hand raised, and then we're...
Just a quick point, because maybe some people haven't come across this before, but sometimes people ask, well, what's the point? Because we can't actually change Kali Yuga. And the answer is, of course, we're doing it for Krishna's pleasure. So it doesn't matter whether we change anything or not.
Yeah. So also Prabhupada says that we can create a sub-age within Kali Yuga. We can create a big shelter for everyone in Kali Yuga. We can build a house in which everyone can live. Yeah. All right, so let's pause there. Let's come back together 15:15, okay? Give you a few more minutes. Okay, so 15:15, we'll get back together.
Prabhu, I've just got back from Australia from London to Australia a few hours ago, so I'm not able to do the next bit.
No problem. Thank you for joining us for this bit. Hare Krishna. Yeah, have a good rest. Hare Krishna. All right, so back at 15:15, yeah? Hare Krishna. Hare Bol. Hare Krishna, dear devotees, welcome back. Just sharing the screen again. Just bear with me. Sharing a portion of the screen. Welcome. I think another couple of devotees have joined us for this second part. Welcome, Avema, Ruchiri Dasi. Welcome. And a humble request again, if unless you're driving or something, it's really nice if you have your cameras on. I prefer speaking to people rather than computers. Hare Krishna. Okay, also going on here. Share. 1 second. Okay, let me get the right. Okay, here we are. Short break, but it makes a difference, I hope. Okay. All right, so let's continue with this. We're looking at the first. Pure devotional service has 6 characteristics. 2 are manifest in Vaidhi, then another 2 at Bhava, and another 2 at Prema. So 6 in all. 6, we're looking at this subject in a moment. Looking at the 6 qualities of pure devotional service, and we're just describing this one here. Pure devotional service at the beginning of Subhada, all auspiciousness. So we're just describing this here now. Possession all good qualities. Now we have quoted a verse in that regard earlier on, but it's an important verse. It's from the 5th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So we will go over it again. So let's make this point again. I think it's very important. Prabhupada expands this here for the Krishna consciousness movement. Yeah, it's offering. It's the Krishna consciousness movement. However, is so nice that it can render benefit to the entire human race. So in that sense, the Krishna consciousness movement is all auspicious. Yeah. If there's a temple in your town, you're living in a very auspicious place. Yeah. If there's someone in your street who is a devotee, if there's someone in the street who's a devotee, that street is very auspicious. If one of your family members is a devotee, the whole family gets the benefit of that. So Krishna consciousness is very auspicious. So possessing all good qualities, someone could read this, just a translation for this verse here, and we'll explain why this picture's there. Okay. Any volunteers to read, just unmute and can read.
All the demigods and their exalted qualities, such as religion, knowledge, and renunciation, become manifest in the body of one who has developed unalloyed devotion for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vasudeva. On the other hand, a person devoid of devotional service and engaged in material activities has no good qualities, even if he is adept at the practice of mystic yoga or the honest endeavor of maintaining his family and relatives. He must be driven by his own mental speculations and must engage in the service of the Lord's external energy. How can there be any good qualities in such a man?
Okay. Yashastik Bhakti Bhavade Kinchanai. So this is speaking about the primal qualities of a pure soul that manifest as one engages in devotional service to Krishna. Because everyone's part and parcel of Krishna. So Krishna, everything about him is good. Yeah. So as one becomes purified, then one's going to manifest qualities in relationship to Krishna as eternal soul. Yeah. So this is what this is speaking about here. Now, before we go on, sometimes this is confusing for devotees. See the part I'm highlighting here? Even if he's adept at the practice of mystic yoga or honest endeavor of maintaining his family and relatives. And practically we do meet people who are not practicing devotional service, but they are polite and they seem to have good qualities. Anyone experience that? Hopefully we have. There's still some people like that around. But those qualities are not specifically manifest as a symptom as the original symptoms of their pure self. It may be just manifest circumstantially because of the manifestation of the mode of goodness. Yeah. So at some point you may see something different. Yeah. Okay. But to point here, Prabhupada, again, any questions or comments, please feel free to either unmute or just raise your hand. It comes up here. I can see if you raise your hand, and please feel free to ask. But for now, Prabhupada highlights, which he does, Prabhupada didn't have much good to say about modern education. Yeah. in more than one place, Prabhupada will go to the extent of calling educational facilities slaughterhouses. Okay. Yeah. Prabhupada, and he's bringing this out here. He says that people think that modern education is auspicious and will endow one, will create all good qualities, yeah, just by being educated. So it could be a big discussion. But the point that Prabhupada is making out here, in comparison, say, Prabhupada says a Krishna conscious boy, even if he's not well educated to the university standard, he can give up, for example, illicit sex, gambling, meat eating, and intoxication. Whereas someone may be very highly educated, but they often can be drunkards, etc. Prabhupada says sex mongers, gamblers, meat eaters, etc. I remember when we was young, secondary school, the school went on an outing. I think we went to France or somewhere. And one of the teachers, he got drunk, and it was even then it was such a thing for all the students to see the school teacher drunk. We didn't expect that. We thought, even as young children, unconsciously even, we were expecting to set the right example for a grown-up. It's such a shock to us children to see him drunk, But so Prabhupada mentions that here. Even a Krishna conscious boy or girl, even if they're not educated to a university level, they're living a more auspicious and clean and productive life sometimes than those who are so-called educated. Yeah, so Prabhupada makes that point. And I explain this picture. Yeah, Prabhupada says many people think that hatha yoga is auspicious in of itself, and he mentions they may sit down to do meditation, yeah, etc. The yogic performances, But again, when the yoga class is over, it may be or may not, or may not be, but often may happen. They engage in same irreligious activities, They may not be, they may eat meat and all types of non-spiritual focused things, even though they may become very expert at hatha yoga. Yeah, so Prabhupada is dispelling that as well. So he brings out here, simply by engaging in Krishna consciousness, one develops a high character. Yeah, Yashasti Bhakti Bhavati Kinchana. Yeah, and Rupa Goswami, he mentions at this point that there's three sources of happiness. Let's just go forward a bit to this slide here. Again, any questions or comments, please feel free to ask. So this happiness comes from, it's different. So now we're moving on to the stage of bhava. In the stage of Vaidhi has two qualities. Bhava has those two qualities and two more. So this is the first one at the stage of bhava. Moksha lakhuta krit. So lakhuta means lightness or small. Yeah, and krit means one who has made or done. So moksha. So in relationship So the happiness experiencing Krishna consciousness, it makes light. Laghutakrit means small. It makes liberation, moksha, pow into complete insignificance. I mean totally insignificant. Devotees are not interested. The bliss they experience is inestimable, ultimately, especially at the stage of bhava. Yeah. So liberation is not a concern. It's not in their mind. It's not within their heart. Yeah. They are otherwise so fulfilled. Yeah. So moksha, lakhuta krit. Yeah. So Prabhupada mentioned the devotees don't care a fig for other happiness. Yeah. And all types of wonderful emotions of happiness will manifest within the heart of a devotee of Krishna, to the extent that he or she may not know what to do with the amount of happiness that they experience. So yeah, so that's moksha lakhuta krit. Yeah. And shubhada, this one's a bit explaining here. This is a symptom of bhava, which Rupa Goswami brings out. It's satulabha. It's not so common. Now, we should understand here that the stage of bhava that's being mentioned here, or this devotional attainment, when it says it's not so common, what it means, it's not so common for someone who's not following the principles of pure devotional service. Yeah. For someone who's not seriously following the path of pure devotion, of ananda, or they're not on the path of kevala bhakti. Yeah. Their faith goes in other directions other than just Krishna. For those persons, it's very, very rare. They're not going to experience this type of level of attraction and affection for Krishna. Yeah. So this is brought out here. So even if one executes different processes of self-realization for thousands of years, they're not necessarily going to achieve this. It's very rare. Yeah. So it's mentioned here, I just quote from, if you have a hard copy of the book, page 14. My dear Sati, this is picture, Lord Shiva speaking to Sati. If one is a very fine philosopher, analyzing the different processes of knowledge, he can achieve liberation from material entanglement. By performance of ritualistic sacrifices recommended in the Vedas, one can be elevated to the platform of pious activities and enjoy material comforts in life to the fullest extent. But all such endeavors can hardly offer anyone devotional service to the Lord, not even if one tries for it by such processes for many, many thousands of births. Yeah. So at some point, bhava here described, which is a ray of love, let's now speak it from our perspective as bhaktas on the path of developing, hopefully, pure devotional service. We can execute Vaidhi Bhakti according to our efforts. According to our own sincere efforts, we can concentrate on the holy name. But this here, bhava, cannot be achieved by that, not by our own efforts. It's only if Krishna gives it to us. All right. So it's a certain level certain ceiling we can get to. Then we're dependent upon grace that comes down. Yeah. So keep that in mind. So, and why is that? Because it's going to control Krishna ultimately. So he's not going to give it out easy. It's not like buying a bag of rice in Sainsbury's. This level for the jiva to come to this level of having so much bhava and so much affection that Krishna cannot resist one's association. Because Krishna is controlled by love. Just like Mother Yasoda controls Krishna and all the residents of Vrindavan control Krishna. Yeah. That's not given out so cheaply. Yeah. So from the perspective of a sadhaka. Okay. Any comments on this, please feel free to ask. Now, I just want to go back here though. There's 3 types of happiness, yeah? One for material enjoyment, that Rupa Goswami says. One by identifying oneself with the Supreme, and one derived from Krishna consciousness. So moksha, lokudakrit, powers into insignificance, these 2. If it powers into insignificance, this one, what to speak of this one? Yeah. The happiness and the joy that a devotee experiences in association of other devotees and in the kirtan of the Lord and their execution of devotional service, powers makes this seem, well, it shows it in its right light to actually, yeah, one will no longer be attracted to drinking with friends on a Friday night in a local pub. There's nothing there for one. Yeah, it's actually you see it as suffering. Here in London, you know, I live in central London near the temple. We have ashram here, and there's all pubs, you know, especially now it's summertime, and all the pubs, everyone's standing outside the pubs, they're all drinking away, think they're actually enjoying, think they're actually happy. Anyway, we won't go in, you know where. Okay, so back here. Yeah. Any questions about this? So I brought out 2 things here, which I just read recently, actually, in Jiva Goswami's commentary on Bhakta Rasmrita Sindhu, where this aspect, one of the reasons what is being spoken about is really achieved, if what it means is it's really achieved for those who are practicing other process of self-realization, yeah, other than pure devotional service, yeah. But so okay, so then you got those who are practicing pure devotional service. This is not going to come just based on their efforts. It's going to come by Krishna's grace and mercy, yeah, because ultimately it controls Krishna. All right. Any questions on that? Well, we're doing all right. If there's no questions on that, we can move on. Okay, got some more. I'm just looking at the. Yeah, thank you if you have your cameras on. Okay, so now each of these stages, let me go back here. Each of these stages, it's mentioned about happiness, yeah? Different degrees of happiness, yeah? So one aspect more, and then more is mentioned here. And then ultimately here. Now we're going into prema, the symptoms of prema, yeah? The last 2. So Sandhurananda Visheshatma, yeah? So this means intense and condensed bliss, very intense, very concentrated, yeah, that nothing can penetrate it whatsoever. One is not even aware that the material world exists, yeah. Sometimes it's a big discussion in of itself, but let's just take a little part of it. So one's in the spiritual world, so can we fall down again? No, you can't. Basically, the jivas in the spiritual world don't even know the material world exists, let alone contemplate it. Yeah. So they're so concentrated. It's so concentrated that nothing can penetrate it. Nothing can penetrate. Like Mother Yasoda, she's so concentrated in the bliss of her Vatsalya Bhav for little Krishna that nothing can penetrate that. Yeah, this is prema. Yeah, well, it's said about prema that it's not even worth trying to speak about it. It's so inconceivable. But here's a few pointers that Rupa Goswami is giving us. Yeah, so no other perception of thought comes into the psyche, comes into the spiritualized mind. So that's why it said there. I can read this. I've got the quote here. Let's see if I've got. Yeah, excuse me, I didn't put the quote. The reference, my dear Lord of the universe, I am feeling transcendental pleasure in your presence and have become merged in the ocean of happiness. I now consider the happiness of Brahmananda to be no more than water in the impression left by a cow's hoof in the earth. Is compared to this ocean of bliss. Yeah. So this it said there's 1 trillion fold. If you cannot, it's like 1 trillion fold compared to the bliss to be experienced in so-called Brahmananda. Yeah. So incalculable bliss. So the happiness of becoming one with the Supreme. So that's a certain type of, it can't compare. So pure devotional service is like it outweighs that like 1 trillion fold or even more. Okay, is this understood? We make become clear here? Yeah. So this is the third time Rupa Goswami is speaking about happiness as a characteristic of Krishna consciousness. Yeah. So there's happiness at the stage of sadhana, there's deeper happiness at bhava, and there's incalculable happiness at prema. Yeah. Sometimes it's described that happiness at prema is like if you have someone who's standing at the edge of an ocean, yeah, and then the ocean, there's a tsunami, and the waves of the ocean wash that person away, and they're in this ocean being tossed by the waves. So the happiness of prema is like that for the jiva. It's like a tsunami of spiritual emotions and happiness washes over them, and they're completely lost in this overwhelming ocean of love in reciprocation with Krishna. Yeah. So let me just read here. It's not on the slide. This is there in your Nectar Devotion. It says it's interesting to read. It's from Shrita Swami's commentary on Srimad Bhagavatam. My dear Lord, some of the fortunate persons who are swimming in the ocean of your nectar of devotion and who are relishing the nectar of narrations of your pastimes certainly know ecstasies which immediately minimize the value of the happiness derived from religiousness, economic development, sense gratification. Let me just move something here. And liberation. Such transcendental devotee regards any kind of happiness other than devotional service no better than a straw in the street. Okay, so that's Sundarananda Visheshatma. So just to remind you, we're speaking about the 6 qualities of pure devotional service. Yeah, now we're going to go to the last one here. Krishna Akashini. Yeah. So, Patrick, you could read this 11, 14, 20 for us.
Yeah. My dear Uddhav, you may know it from me that the attraction I feel for devotional service rendered by my devotee is not to be attained even by the performance of mystic yoga, philosophical speculation, ritualistic sacrifices, the study of Vedanta, the practice of severe austerities, or the giving of everything in charity. These are, of course, very nice activities, but they are not as attractive to me as the transcendental loving service rendered by my devotees. Srimad Bhagavatam 11, 14, 20.
Okay. So at this level of devotion, Krishna is attracted to you. He's attracted to that devotion. As we know, Krishna, is attracted to devotion. Patram pushpam param toyam yomai bhakti parayati tadaham bhakti uparitam asanami prayamat manaha. If one makes an offering to me with loving devotion, Krishna accepts it. Yeah, of course, that can be done at the stage of Vaidhi. But here we're speaking about prema. So Prabhupada brings in, as Rupa Goswami, he follows him, and Prabhupada brings in as an example of the highest degree of this is obviously Radharani. Yeah. So Prabhupada invokes her here, and she, in that sense, she's called Madan Mohan. Yeah. Madan Mohan Mohini, which means that, so first of Madan Mohan is Krishna, so that he attracts and defeats attraction of thousands of cupids. Now, Radharani attracts that person who attracts the whole of creation. Yeah. She attracts, and how does she attract him? Through her devotion. Yeah, which manifests the whole persona. Yeah, everything about Radharani is a manifestation of her pure, unadulterated devotion to Krishna. And Krishna, she completely controls Krishna. He becomes like a plaything. She completely bewilders him. Yeah. So Krishna's energy bewilders the whole of material creation. Yeah. So in other words, Radharani is still more attractive, for she can attract Krishna. Therefore, she is known as Madan Mohan Mohini, the attractor of Cupid. Yeah. So Prabhupada brings out another important aspect of devotional service as one progresses in devotional service, that actually devotees means, Prabhupada mentions that to perform devotional service means to actually follow in the footsteps of Radharani, and the devotees in Vrindavan. And devotees, he says, they put themselves under the care of Radharani. Because she attracts Krishna, she's very, very merciful as well. So they take shelter to achieve the different levels of perfection in devotional service. Yeah. So Prabhupada mentions that, in other words, devotional service is not an activity of the material world. It is directly under control of the internal energy of the Lord. Mamaibam sa jiva loke jiva bhutam. Yeah. No, wrong verse. So, and the material world, and it is so devotional service is not an activity of the material world. It is under control of Krishna's internal energy, which is Radharani. Yeah. The verse here that Bhagavad Gita confirms that the Mahatmas, they're under the protection of the Devi Prakriti. So this is the internal energy, which is Radharani. Yeah. So they're under control of Krishna's internal potency. So that potency attracts even Krishna himself. And then we have the verse here, as we just read. Yeah, my dear Uddhava, you may know it from me that the attraction I feel from devotional service rendered by my devotees is not attained by performance of anything else in the mystic yoga, philosophy, ritualistic sacrifices. Yeah, giving up, being austere, giving up everything in charity. They're nice. All right, they're nice, but nothing. There isn't anything like the service rendered by my devotees. I'm so attracted to that. So in other words, you can be doing austerities for millions of years. You can be giving, you can be giving in charity for countless lifetimes. But if you cook an offering for Krishna with loving devotion, Krishna will be attracted to you. Not to the yogi doing austerities in the Himalayas, we could say, for thousands of births or for thousands of years. Krishna's not attracted. All right, it's better than doing sinful activities. Okay, better than being a gross materialist. You're tapasvi and you're doing austerities and you're purifying your soul. But that's not attracted to Krishna. Yeah. Someone may be a housewife with 3 kids and they're cooking and offering for Krishna and they've got so much love and devotion. Krishna happily accepts it. Yeah. Isn't it wonderful? Devotional service. Can I see some nodding heads? Some thumbs up? Hi. Hare Krishna. Yeah. So Krishna becomes attracted to devotional service of his devotees. There's a few verses that again they substantiate this. Yeah, and this part of the Bhagavatam, Narad is glorifying Yudhisthira. Yeah. So while the king, Maharaj Yudhisthira, actually he appreciates the qualities of Prahlad Maharaj. Yeah. A devotee always, because, first Narada Muni is glorifying the Pandavas because Krishna has become their doorman, Krishna has become their servant, Krishna has become very much their protector and their well-wisher. And he's living with them as well. And all the devas and highly elevated persons are coming to the palace of the Pandavas to meet Krishna. So Krishna has actually decided to live in the house of the Pandavas. Would that sound nice? Krishna's going to come and live with you. You're such a devotee that Krishna's going to come and live with you. Yeah. So that's the level of devotion of the Pandavas. So attractive. So Narada Muni is glorifying the Pandavas and Yudhisthira, but Yudhisthira is not, he's not very happy with that. And instead he glorifies Prahlad Maharaj as being having much more devotion than himself. Yeah. So he mentions Prahlad is actually a real devotee. I am nothing. This is what Yudhisthira says. So he says, my dear, but then Narad says, my dear Yudhisthira, you, the Pandava brothers, are the only fortunate people in this world. The Supreme Personality has appeared on this planet and is presenting himself to you as an ordinary human being. He is always with you in all circumstances. He is living with you and covering himself from the eyes of others. Others cannot understand that he is the Lord, but he is still living with you as your cousin, as your friend, as your messenger. There's no one more fortunate than you. So he's glorifying Maharaj Yudhisthira in that way. All right. Any questions, comments on this? So that, unless there's any questions on this chapter, that finishes chapter 1. All right. So now you know about the characteristics of pure devotional service. Yeah, been nicely explained. What I've noticed, I was looking at the Nectar Devotion and the Nectar of Devotion last week. And I was seeing that actually it reminded me, looking at the chapters again, that the chapters are relatively small. At least how it's manifest there in the Nectar Devotion hard copy. It's only 2 or 3 pages for each chapter. But yeah. Okay, so let's bring up chapter 4. Are we ready for chapter 4? Can I hear some yeses? Anyone not want to go into chapter 4? No, you want to go into chapter 4. Okay, 1 second. Let me fish around for it. Okay. No, not chapter 4. I'm speaking about chapter 2. That was chapter 1. Yeah, that's why he didn't answer me. What's he speaking about? Chapter. We want to dig out chapter 2. So let me dig it out here on my screen. Okay, Hare Krishna. I got chapter 3 up by mistake. Let me fish around for chapter 2. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Got to search for it. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Okay, found it. Okay, let's share my screen again. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Okay, move things around a bit. Okay, so chapter 2. So the first stages of devotion. So let's have a look at this. Again, this is repeated here again. If there's one thing you're going to remember from today's class, it's these three. Okay, I must have mentioned it a good few times. So 3 categories of devotional service: sadhana, yeah, bhava, and the 2 symptoms of each is described again in brief, and prema. Yeah. So the first one is kleshagni and subhada. Nice to remember these terms if you can. Moksha, lakutakrit, and sadulabha, and prema, shundarananda, visheshatma, and Krishna karshini. Yeah. Okay, so pure devotion has 6 qualities. That's brought up again. So just touching on that. Now, so having described the qualities of pure devotional service, of Uttama Bhakti specifically, okay, having described the qualities of Uttama Bhakti, now Rupa Goswami is going to explain the qualification or the adhikar for actually practicing that which has just been described, that has 6 very auspicious qualities. What's the adhikar? What's the qualification? Yeah, this is an interesting discussion. Basically, what comes out here, perhaps I'll ask as a question. Let me just make sure. Can anyone perhaps offer an answer for that? What's the qualification for practicing bhakti? For practicing this pure devotional service? If someone was to ask you, you're given a class, so what's the qualification? And they ask you, what's the qualification? Oh, excuse me. I would say, have a wild guess. Don't worry if you think you might give the wrong answer. It's not such an easy question, actually. You can see you're all thinking very deeply. What's the qualification? PhD?
Surrender? Is it
Surrender?
surrender?
So Patik mentions surrender.
I mean, submissiveness, is it the one?
It
I mean,
definitely
that's the guy.
it definitely helps. So what's the first? But before that, what's the qualification for even taking it up?
Maybe
I guess you could-
curiosity.
Curiosity,
Being humble and having faith in the scriptures.
humble, having faith. Thank you, Rema. Having humble, having faith in scriptures. Yes, these are not wrong answers, but not the one we're looking for. It's more simple than that. Actually, it comes even before. So, what's the qualification for even reading that you have to be humble? What's the qualification for even, beginning to understand about the basic principles of surrender? What's the qualification for even reading about surrender? Okay, I've got you intrigued now. Basically, all right, we'll give it away.
Mercy of Guru and Krishna.
All right, but what's the qualification for understanding that you need the mercy?
Is it having some humility?
What's the qualification for knowing that you need humility? All right, okay. Basically, you have some attraction. That's what would be. You can see it's there in your Nectar Devotion. It's described in chapter 2. Yeah, is that right? Chapter 2, yeah. Prabhupada mentioned if you simply have an attraction, you can begin to practice it. Yeah. And it's mentioned, as we might know, that generally this attraction comes from devotion executed in previous lives. Yeah. Prabhupada mentions no one can take the devotional service unless he had some previous connection for it. Yeah. So you have some attraction. Yeah. For example, Prabhupada says, suppose in this life I practice devotional service to some extent. Okay, you may not be 100% perfectly performed, but it will not be lost. And the next life, from that very point where I stop this life, I begin again. That attraction will cause you to be, you'll be attracted to devotees. You'll be attracted to the activities of devotion. So Prabhupada mentions always a continuity. But the qualification is not necessarily to be very pure, not necessarily to be very Brahminical, not necessarily to be, even you could say, be very learned in the Sastra. No, the qualification is there's an attraction. That means anyone who smiles at Harinam, anyone, is qualified for bhakti, is qualified for taking up devotional service. Yeah. They have some attraction. You could say, I think someone said that they're curious. So anyone who's even curious, that means they're attracted. So they can take it up. Yeah. Anyone can take up devotional service. Anyone can come to the temple and engage in the arti of the Lord. Yeah. Even if you're not following the regulative principles. Yeah. You can begin the process of pure devotional service. It's not like we have on a receptionist, no one allowed to enter the temple unless you're following the 4 regulative principles. No. If you have some attraction to walk in the temple and walk up those stairs, you're qualified to take part in the arti of the Lord. That's your qualification. And that qualification, where is it coming from? Generally, it's going to come from a previous practice. But although, now, this may sound circular in the sense that we require attraction to begin devotional service, okay? But where does it begin? Where did that attraction begin? Could someone perhaps answer that? Where does that attraction begin? You understand the point we're making here? Someone's attracted to devotion. Okay, but what caused them to be attracted? What is it that caused them to be attracted? So in the next life, they're attracted.
The kirtan
Okay, so Rama's saying kirtan.
and the prasadam.
Prashadam, yes.
I guess it varies from person to person, right?
Go on. Explain more, Alexander. It varies. To explain a bit more.
Oh yeah, I was just saying that I think it varies from person
Oh,
to
sorry, Levine. Excuse me. I thought it was Xander. Excuse me.
no, yeah. I just think it varies from person to person. I think everyone has a different experience.
Yeah, that's true. But there's something, a word which when I mentioned it, you would have heard of.
Oh,
Sorry,
I,
Xander. Go
so
ahead.
I don't think it might be wrong then. I was just going to say, is it that somehow or other you receive a little bit of mercy somewhere along the way, just and then you have an experience where you might come into you might come into association with a devotee or so on and so forth.
Yeah. Have you read The Nectar of Devotion before, Xander Prabhu?
No, I haven't. I haven't.
Well, you're doing really well because you've got it. This is what we're looking for. It's called Agata Sukriti. Sachikamani, you wanted to comment on this? Your hand's just gone up there.
No, I was just going to say, Prabhu, what I was hearing, what I was listening for when you were sharing there is causeless. Cause I think because you're asking what caused that.
Yeah, what causes
Yeah. And I was thinking the idea of causeless mercy. I think somebody defined causeless mercy as when you haven't done anything to deserve it.
Yeah, and that comes up here in my notes. I remember looking at my notes. That comes up, and we'll get to that. But just on this point here from Xander, is mentioned. What he's speaking about is something called Agata Sukriti. So unknowingly, you befriend. Unknowingly, you befriend a devotee. You do some unknowing devotional service. Yeah, it may not be you're doing. You may not be aware. So, for instance, someone's very pious, and they live by the virtue that anyone who knocks on my door and asks for charity, they will never go away empty-handed. Yeah, well, some persons live by them type of virtues, so they're known in their village. Then they're known in the town to be very pious. And then they take up, and then they become bhaktas. Then they're walking around with a bead bag in their hand and neck beads on their hand, and they're chanting the Maha Mantra, and they're going to the Namahata. Might be so Indian. So everyone in the village, well, he became a devotee because he was pious. No, the reason he became a devotee is because he gives charity. And one time, someone knocked on the door, and they were a devotee. And they asked for some donation for the new Namahata or something. So that pious person gave a donation to the devotee. So he did devotional service. Yeah. So that that caused an attraction to the principles of bhakti to manifest. So it starts with devotion in one sense. Yeah, it starts devotion is causeless in that sense that there's nothing material that causes it to manifest. Only devotion causes devotion to manifest. So another example, in our temple, for our temple, we have many people come to do work in the temple. Some come to fix the boilers, some come to put new speakers, there's some come to do the electrics. Over the years, so many people come. Or the postman comes every day. Say the postman, and he comes in and gives the post to Tripad, and he says to Tripad, "Good morning." So he's pleased. So he's pleased to see a devotee. Yeah, and he says, "How are you today?" So there's a nice exchange happens between the postman and the receptionist. Yeah, so that person is now has done devotional service. Yeah, so whether he likes it or not, they're going to be attracted. Now, it does so happen that someone who's pious, they do have a better chance of getting this agnata sukriti. But even an impious person, and there is examples of that, where there's examples where persons who have attacked the Harinam with fists, flying, and they eventually become a devotee. There's so many stories like that, where someone is very antagonistic and envious towards the Vaishnavas. they become a devotee. So it's not, to become a devotee is not always dependent on piety, although in a lot of cases, as we said, we gave the example of a pious man and who unknowingly does something devotional. Okay. So is that more clear? So any questions on that? So we're just so
I have a
Sure.
question, which is just
Alexander, please, yeah.
If say when I was younger, I was at school and one of my classmates, I happened to help out with something, render him some service, and then he goes off and becomes a devotee.
Mm-hmm.
Does that qualify as me having rendered some service to a devotee, even though at the time he wasn't quote unquote, practicing, etc. So on and so forth.
Yeah, there's a story in Chaitanya Charitamrita where Lord Chaitanya's he's criticized by the son-in-law of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, Amolga his name, and he tries to and he he finds some fault with Lord Chaitanya because Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya is enthusiastically and devotionally. He's invited Lord Chaitanya to take prasadam, and of course he's cooked a mountain of prasadam out of his devotion. So Amolga, he knows his son-in-law is envious, so he makes plans that he's not around. But somehow or another, Amolga gets in and he comes in a room, and he sees this mountain of prasadam before Lord Chaitanya, and he begins criticizing Lord Chaitanya, much to the devastation of Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, who even after that he wants to commit suicide, and he tells his daughter that you are no longer my daughter. He becomes so emotionally struck by that. Anyway, the story unfolds that Amolga, because of his enviousness, he gets cholera. And he's lying there dying. And Lord Chaitanya, he asked Sarvabhauma, where is your son-in-law? So he explains, so Sarvabhauma, he's saying, just see his results. Now he's dying of cholera. So Lord Chaitanya goes to see Amolga, and he puts his hand in his heart, and he says, why, you are such a elevated person. You're a Brahmana. Why is these things in your heart? And he cures Amolga, and Amolga has, he becomes a devotee. But then he says, the point I'm getting to, he says that because my devotees are so dear to me that even the dog in the house of my devotee is very dear to me. So I guess what I'm saying here is that some other devotees here might have another opinion, but even if you render service or do something for someone who later becomes a devotee, anything that anyone has done to that person, because they're so dear to Krishna, that you may have helped them in the past, even when I was not a devotee, Krishna becomes very happy for you. Yeah? So even if later that person becomes a devotee, that person who did some little service is going to be so much benefited, and they will become attracted to the principles of bhakti in the next life. So yeah, even if a dog becomes very Lord Chaitanya considered the dog in the house of Sarvabhauma to be very special. So yes, does that help, Alexander? That was what I might say on that. If anyone else has any points on that. So Prabhupada mentions here that however, there's no qualification. This is to Satchikamar's point on causeless mercy. Yeah, there's no qualification for receiving causeless mercy. That's the whole definition of it. It's causeless mercy. It depends on the bhakta. It depends on the devotee where that causeless mercy goes. Yeah, a devotee may choose to go to distribute books in Vauxhall. Yeah, so they all get causeless mercy. If he chooses to go to Ilford instead, then those in Vauxhall don't get causeless mercy. But those in Ilford get causeless mercy. There's no particular qualification on the part of the receiver. Depends if the bhakta, wherever the devotee goes, he gives out causeless mercy. Wherever the a Madhyama devotee goes, he gives out mercy, mercy, causeless, causeless, causeless. Just like on the street, you know, we don't stop someone and we ask them first, are you following the regular principles before I give you this book? Otherwise, I can't give you this book if you're smoking or drinking. Sorry, I can't give it. No, give, causeless, 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 causeless. It's giving, causeless mercy. You know, even homeless people, you know, see they're so degraded in a lot of ways sometimes. Chant the holy name, causeless, causeless. You've done nothing to receive it. I don't care. Chant the holy name. Yeah. So Prabhupada says, there's no qualification for receiving mercy and performing Agnata Sukriti. Consequently, advancement in Krishna consciousness is not based on their intellectual abilities, but it's based on your taste for hearing Krishna Katha. Okay? You don't have to be a big scholar, you just have to be attracted to it. You'd be attracted to hearing. Like so many devotees came to the temple this morning, packed. Why? Because they're attracted to a devotee. They're attracted to Vaisheshika. So they came. Yeah. Not everyone who came, they're not all scholars, they're not all, they came because they have that attraction. Yeah. Then Prabhupada says, explains here. Anyway, for persons who have a natural taste for understanding books like Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, devotional service is easier than for those who are simply accustomed to mental speculation and argumentative processes. Anyway, for persons who have natural taste, yeah, then it is easier. It is easier for those who are just speculating and engage in just arguments for argument's sake. If someone is just attracted to the Bhagavad Gita, you know, that's their qualification for taking up bhakti. All right? So that's the qualification. So now we're clear. You know, so someone asks you, what's the qualification for practicing devotional service? 4 regular principles. You have to do Bhakti Sastri, Bhakti Vaibhava. No, you just have to be attracted. And why you're attracted? From a previous life. Where did it start? Causelessly, you know, unknowing devotional service, you know. So, okay. Let's check. What's the time? 1:13. Okay. 15. We can hang on 15 minutes. And I see some nods, some thumbs up. Great. Hare Krishna. So let's, next slide. Okay, so let's describe the qualification. Okay. What is pure devotional service? What are the characteristics? What's the qualification? And what's the definition? So we need to define then what is sadhana bhakti. Okay. So this is Kuti Satya Pavit Satya Bhava Sasarinadi Nityas Yuktas Siddhasya. Got it on my wall here. Pakatim Pritirit Sanyata. So this is a very important definition that's given by Rupa Goswami. A lot could be said about this definition of sadhana. Here it is. Someone would like to read this for us? Someone who hasn't read? Someone could read.
I can.
Go ahead. Thank you. Thank
When
you.
transcendental devotional service, by which love for Krishna is attained, is executed by the senses, it is called sadhana bhakti, or regulative sadhana bhakti, or regulative discharge of devotional service. Such devotion eternally exists within the heart of every living entity. The awakening of this eternal devotion is the potentiality of devotional in practice.
Yeah, excuse me, your name is Ruchira Dasi. Excuse me, I'm reading your other name. But
Rima.
Rima. All right, okay. Yeah. It's got Ruchira Dasi there. Is that correct?
That's my mum.
Oh, okay, that's your mum. Okay, so all right. never clear. All right, so definition of sadhana bhakti. Yeah, so this is begin. That's the definition. We're going to unpack this a little bit. So Prabhupada is beginning, for your interest, the second wave. Do you remember? We're looking at the nectar devotion is divided. It's an ocean, and there's the northern side, eastern side, southern side, and western side, and each ocean has 4 waves. So we're now swimming around in the second wave, okay, of the Bhakti Rasmrita Sindhu, okay? So, so in other words, sadhana bhakti is also known as something called Chesta Rupa. There's these 2 terms, which you don't have to memorize, but there's Chesta Rupa and Bhava Rupa. So Chesta Rupa means engaging of the senses in the execution of devotional service. Yeah. So the result of that is it manifests, which brings on bhava. So the reason you do sadhana is to invoke the next stage of devotion, which is called bhava. Okay. So the chesta, the activities of devotion that devotees do, is, as we mentioned in the definition of pure devotional service is an activity. It's not just something that goes on in the mind, it's devotional service. So those at the stage of bhava, those at that stage of bhava, they do things to serve Krishna. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Padasevanam, etc. Now, if we do those same activities which they do, that will invoke that same bhava, that they do. Do you follow that? So sadhana bhakti is practiced, executed with our senses, which bring on the manifestation of bhava. Yeah. So just, can think of a temple situation. Cooking, we're using our senses, our eyes, our nose, our ears, our feet, our hands, our legs. We're engaging our senses in the activities of bhakti. Yeah. So yeah, so Prabhupada mentions to engage the mind and the senses in the particular type of work. So it means the mind as well. So the mind has to be involved for the manifestation of bhava to happen, ultimately. Yeah. It can happen, but it will happen, like if you're chanting japa, but your mind's not absorbed in japa, you can be chanting japa for 10 billion creations. You might not make much progress. But if your mind is there, then that's a full definition of sadhana. Yeah. If you're cleaning the temple room and your mind is absorbed in that activity, then that's sadhana. If it's not, it cannot be strictly called a full definition of sadhana. Yeah. So sadhana means to engage the mind, the chitta, and the senses in a particular. Remember, has to be favorable as well. Okay. So sadhana means then to engage our mind and senses in work for Krishna. So this will bring on, eventually, it will bring on ecstatic emotions. Yeah. But it's not mechanical as well. It's not like, you want something material, you find out how much it costs, you work, you save money, then you buy that thing or whatever it may be, a car, a house, or a musical instrument, and you give it to the person because you gave them a certain amount of money. They're going to give you that thing. Devotional service doesn't work on these principles. Okay? It's not mechanical. Ultimately, Krishna's a person. Yeah? So it's down to Krishna's sweet, causeless mercy. Does that make sense? It's not like if someone takes initiation and like some devotees took initiation today and they chant Hare Krishna for the next 4 years, 5 months, 1 week, and 2 days, and then Bhava's going to come. It's not like you feel the, you've done Bhakti Sastri, Bhakti Vaibhava, Bhakti Sarvabhauma. That's it. And you show that to Krishna at the altar. I want Bhava. Give me Bhava. Look, 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 look. It's a wonderful dynamic which makes spiritual life sometimes very sometimes it can make spiritual life very curious, or it can be very very deep experience because it's not mechanical. And sometimes I'm seeing devotees, you may be practicing 1 or 2 years, 3 years or 4 years or 10 years or 15 years, and sometimes you're practicing, you will feel ecstatic, times where you'll be very ecstatic, but there are times where you won't feel any reciprocation from Krishna. Just be you, your conditioned self, wrestling away. And you don't feel any inner inspiration, may not come. Because it's not mechanical. And at that time, your devotee becomes reflective. They become very much, they want to go deeper. They're feeling a separation from Krishna. And that's all good. It's not mechanical. Okay. All right. So let me check the time. Okay. So then how does sadhana how then does sadhana, if it's not, we mentioned that sadhana means engage in the senses, in the mind and the senses in Krishna's service. But then how does sadhana bring about bhava? Yeah. Basically, that sadhana will cheto dapana, it purifies the heart. Yeah. And gradually from that purification, you will long for Krishna. Yeah. You long for the service of Krishna. Yeah. So that is called, you get a bit more details here, that's called vipalamba, separation. So that devotion is executed in this mood of longing has the potential to awaken bhava. Yeah. You follow? So in other words, we mustn't let our sadhana become, for us to make tangible advancement, it cannot become mechanical and devoid of inner aspiration. Yeah. Sometimes it's a good question. Sometimes a question comes up and devotee will ask, how can my chantings become very mechanical? Anyone have that experience of that? You had that question? My chantings, how can I stop chanting mechanically? Now, there's different ways you can answer that question, but that question in itself means that that person who's asking that question has come to a very important stage of their devotional development. They're not satisfied with just their mechanical execution of devotional service. They can feel it. They want to feel Krishna. They want to experience Krishna. So they're asking, how can I stop chanting mechanically? In one sense, you could give different answers, as I said, to that question. Well, focus, make sure. But really, I said, that's a glorious question to ask. Just asking that question means that you are making advancement. Yeah, you understand? That's making tangible advancement. Because you cannot make advancement if your devotion service is just mechanical. If you're just clocking in. Okay, Mongaladi, ticket on my signature. I made it for Mongaladi. Mechanical. Our heart has to be there. We as a soul has to deeply desire Krishna. Yeah. And that will come when you're executing sadhana. Yeah. You execute sadhana, you're becoming purified. So these two things, Chesta Rupa means you're engaging your senses, but it has to be engaged with a mood. You have to clean the stairs with a mood. It has to be an accompanied, not bhava, the stage of bhava, but bhava as definition being a mood. It has to be accompanied with an emotion. Your chanting has to be a prayer, it has to be a calling. It's not just Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Hare. Okay, done it. Great, fantastic. Done my 16 rounds. But your heart's been somewhere else. Your mind's somewhere else, your heart's somewhere else. Your heart has to be there, the mind has to be there. Yeah. So you understand? You have Chesta Rupa, Bhava Rupa. Yeah. That's the full definition of sadhana. That's a sadhana which will bring you to the stage of bhava. Yeah. So that's something we have to learn to develop this mood. Yeah. Any questions about this? Okay. Now, going further. So this definition is very, there's a lot more could be said about this, but let's just leave it at that for now. Kuti Satya Pabit Satya. So it's there as well. The fact that it's there within the heart. Yeah. We just have to, and this brings up this next part. For example, Prabhupada gives this example. Someone could read this who hasn't read? Anyone not read yet? We might have exhausted our readers. Any non-readers yet? Go ahead. Got to get you engaged. Quick, before 1:30.
Therefore, we must practice sadhana bhakti, which means to offer mangalarti deity worship in the morning, to refrain from certain material activities, to offer obeisances to the spiritual master, and to follow many other rules and regulations, which will be discussed here one after another.
Okay, it's there in your next devotion. So Prabhupada gives the example here is given just as a child with practice learns to walk. Now, the reason a child learns to walk is because the ability to walk is innate within the child. Yeah. Anyone tried to teach a cat to walk before? We used to try when we was young. Lift the cat up on 2 legs and set him on his way. And a dog. No, it doesn't have it's not there within, so it's not going to come out no matter how much you try, because it's not there. But devotion to God is there within everyone's heart. Yeah. So sadhana, the process is about bringing it out. Yeah, it's not Prabhupada saying, not an artificial imposition. It's clearing away the crud and the dirt and bringing out the real jiva comes out. And that real jiva is naturally attracted to Krishna. Yeah. So the capacity to walk is there in the child. With a little practice, he can walk very nicely. Where was I recently? I was somewhere, and I was in Mayapur, and this couple had this young child who was just learning to walk, just finding his feet. Yeah. So in other words, what's coming out here, another example is given, I think Prabhupada gives trying to push start a car. Anyone tried to bump start a car before? We used to do that. You have to get it going, you have to get the engine going, then you jump in and pull the then when it catches, One of my friends had a car which he always had to park it on top of a hill because the starter motor wouldn't work. So anyway, like pushing a car. Yeah. So devotional service is the natural instinct for every living entity. So Prabhupada would also bring this out as one proof. He would bring this out when he would mention that how many Western people, how many Europeans and Westerners are taking up devotional service. And sometimes he was questioned, how have you done it, Swamiji? So Prabhupada said, well, it's natural in every jiva. It's already there. Every jiva has a natural loving propensity towards Krishna, towards the Supreme. Yeah, so Prabhupada would bring that out, All right. We've hit 1:30, and as you know, I do like to stop on time. So let's press pause here. So thank you for your kind attention. I hope these lessons here were of some interest to you. And please, let's join us next week. Next week should be fine. There's no festivals, I don't think. So we'll pick up from here and we're going to go through these slides next week. The mad conditioned soul, okay? Look at that. Quote from the 7th canto. Different now. Next week we're going to start speaking about Raganuga Bhakti. So hold on, okay? And there's a lot of misconceptions about that, a lot of confusion. So we're going to speak about that. Just going to introduce the subject. Yeah, I'm going to throw in this one. Okay. So thank you everyone again for your kind attention. And any questions that you have, please feel free to put it on the any thoughts or questions, comments that come up in the week. Always happy to look at that on the WhatsApp group. Okay. So thank you everyone. I wish you a wonderful day in Krishna consciousness. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Rupa Goswami ki jai. Nectar devotion ki jai. Bhakti Sastri study ki jai. Nidagauda Premanande Haribo. Hare Krishna.
Haribo, thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Thank you,
Olga.
Prabhu.
Olga.
Hare Krishna.